Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today, I'd like to welcome you to episode 5 of The Roads Not Taken, a weekly series where we go over the previous week's events and we look at stories that were uncovered, underreported, or stories that later on are going to provide a whole bunch of context to events that are just bound to happen. A lot of times, news will break, it won't really be covered, and then later on it becomes incredibly important. And that's what we try to focus on here. We will start off with foreign policy, and we will start off in Libya. Okay, in Libya, a powerful storm dumped a whole bunch of rain from the Med. That was followed by 2 dams busting. This flooded the city of Derma. This is a city with 100,000, more or less, people in it. The toll at time of filming is unknown, but it is estimated to be more than 10,000. There will probably be a pretty lengthy video about this over on the main channel, and how Americans, particularly those who live in red states, need to learn from what happened here. Okay, in China, economic issues are being read by foreign policy experts, people who provide commentary, as lessening the likelihood of Chinese intervention in Taiwan. Basically, they feel that China's current economic issues will distract them from any military foreign policy aims that they have. In Canada, the trial of some of the alleged leaders of the Ottawa convoy demonstrations are underway. The ideology and politics involved with these demonstrations is a pretty clear example of when the U.S. sneezes, Canada catching a cold. On behalf of the United States, I would like to apologize. Russia seems to be evolving when it comes to their artillery tactics. Russia's tactics have basically been the same since World War II. They now seem to be trying to adjust, pun intended, and focus more on accuracy than saturation. This might alleviate some of the issues they have and the debt that they're going to incur with North Korea. It's worth noting that, even today, their doctrine really calls for set numbers. You know, if they're going to hit this area, it is this big, it has this many people in it, they need to fire 720 shells. That's how it works. Rather than having, 5 really well-placed ones. We're starting to see that shift. We'll see how sustained it is and how successful they are at it. In news that is definitely going to matter later, the United Kingdom has unveiled the Hydra 400. This is a jet-propelled drone that fires laser-guided brimstone weapons. They are air-to-ground missiles. For the uninitiated, this is a tank killer. It is a tank killer. I would imagine that it's going to see use relatively soon. As soon as they can get this thing fielded, they're going to want to try it out for real. Okay. The world's largest known lithium deposit was found in the United States. This is going to have big foreign policy implications for the future. This is an ingredient that is necessary for electric vehicles. In the United States, it looks like the Texas Attorney General was acquitted in the Senate trial. There will be tons of commentary on this. I'm going to suggest that Texas Republicans set themselves up for failure here. My guess is they are hoping that this provides them with cover and says, well, we looked into this and it wasn't a big deal. We'll see how the voters feel about that. Okay. Trump once again accused the current president of the United States with being cognitively impaired. And then he went on to suggest that Biden was going to lead us into World War II. Okay. Moving on. President Biden's son was indicted. However, he was indicted on a charge and in a way that gun rights activists have been trying to whittle away at. It's likely that the Bruen decision will come into play when determining whether or not these charges are going to stand. And we will get to see whether the Republican Party and gun rights activists, whether they believe in principle or just loyalty to their party. Okay, presidential candidate Vivek says he would deport children born in the United States if their parents are undocumented. Of course, this campaign promise runs contrary to that little document called the U.S. Constitution. This is not something he can do while abiding by the U.S. Constitution. Mitt Romney is retiring. This is a huge, devastating blow to the moderate Republican faction. They needed him. And there's going to be a whole bunch of liberals and leftists who probably never liked Romney, but now they're going to have to wonder about the actions of whoever is going to replace the senator from Utah. Okay, a federal judge has again declared DACA illegal, reigniting a long-standing fight and once again putting Republicans in a position where they have to produce some kind of legislation to solve the problem. That legislation would need to originate in the House. That is not legislation they will be able to create, partly for a lack of will, because they don't actually want to solve any problems, they want to complain about them, and partly because they lack the ability and coordination to put anything together. So that is going to end up becoming a campaign issue in 2024. A Michigan Republican charged in the fake elector scheme claimed in a court filing that she and 15 others acted, quote, at the direction of Trump. That's going to matter later. Okay, Blake Masters and Kari Lake. They had a phone call that has been described as intense. The two unique candidates plan on vying for the same Senate seat, at least at time of filming. There have been some signs that suggest Masters may be having second thoughts about all this. Either way, it's going to be entertaining. Both of them have a lot of support within the GOP. They probably don't have a lot of support statewide. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. When we're looking at the Republicans catching the car, after realizing that curtailing reproductive rights is not actually a popular position outside of their own little echo chamber, the GOP wants to rebrand. And they want to get away from the term pro-life. They want a new term, not a new policy. Again, they are assuming that their voters and the voters that they can reach aren't really that bright. That is the basis behind this rebranding effort. That it's not the policy that's the problem. It's the terminology. It will be okay if, they take away half the country's rights as long as they call it something else. The end result, once again, they don't want to represent, they want to rule. Crenshaw seems to be gearing up for a fight with Tuberville, over that catastrophic promotions hold. Let them fight. Let them fight. That ought to be entertaining. Let's see what else we have going on here. Republicans in Wisconsin have launched a multi-pronged attack against any attempt to try to remedy the just widespread systemic gerrymandering that goes on in the state. They're trying to go a number of different routes to make sure that they can hold on to those gerrymandered districts. Once again, rule, not represent. J.M. Smucker looks like they're buying Hostess Twinkies for $4.6 billion. No real importance there. I just like Twinkies. Okay, moving on to cultural news. Fox is being sued by pension funds in New York and Oregon. The complaint says that Fox failed its responsibility to the shareholders and promoted, quote, political narratives without regard for whether the underlying factual assertions were true or based on sources worthy of credit. And it sought, quote, to profit from defamation. These are pension funds that are invested in Fox. Twitter, or the site formerly known as Twitter, they verified the account of President John F. Kennedy. Yeah, not candidate Kennedy, President John F. Kennedy. Verified that account, who, quote, it says that he has, quote, come back from the dead. Remember how the new verification process was supposed to get rid of. Yeah, things are going great over at Twitter. Okay, in environmental news, the feds have signaled that they are likely to approve an exemption that would allow ranchers and others to kill wolves being reintroduced to Colorado under certain circumstances. That's right, folks. The wolves aren't even there yet, and there are already plans in place to kill them. I have questions about how successful that reintroduction program is going to be. This year is on track to become the hottest year in Earth's history, at least on record. After July and August saw temperatures reach the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This is the first time the 1.5 threshold has been passed for more than a month. It's the hottest summer of your life so far. Okay, in some odd news, we have K2-18b. It's an exoplanet, and it has been identified as a location that may support life. It's an exoplanet of K2-18, and that's a cool dwarf star. It's inside the Goldilocks zone, and it's drawn a whole lot of attention due to the fact that it has methane and carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. So they believe that it supports life. Obviously, there's going to be more research. Okay, moving on to the questions and answers. Okay, I saw you comment about naming conventions and why Satan II was called that. Can you explain it? Okay, so this is how NATO reporting names work. Understand that a lot of the weapon systems that we have names for, those aren't the producing country's names. Those are NATO names for that particular vehicle or weapon. And the coding actually isn't that hard. A, if it starts with an A, it's an air-to-air weapon, like the Apex. B is a bomber, like the Backfire. C is commercial or cargo, like the Camel. Let's see, F is fighter, like Fulcrum, which Fulcrum is one of those where the Russian pilots that actually heard that name, they kind of leaned into it and they started using it because they view it as pivotal to the Russian air program, which is cool. But that's where we also get, Fishbed. There's a whole bunch of planes that have names that are not quite as cool as Fulcrum, and that's where it comes from. H is a helicopter, the most famous Russian helicopter being the Hind. That's how it works. So S is surface-to-surface missiles. So Satan II, Scud, Styx, things like that. That's just to kind of unify how NATO reports that stuff. So if one of these is spotted in a combat zone, that's how it comes back, and it is all standardized. This way you don't have a bunch of different translations for one particular device. Okay. What's up with the changes to YouTube's ads? Lots of creators are complaining. Okay, so that is, in my opinion, not a big deal. If you don't know what's going on, up until very recently, creators were allowed to choose what types of ads would appear before or after their content. Like, you know how sometimes there'll be an ad that you can watch a few seconds and then skip, and sometimes you can't skip, and all of that stuff, right? It used to be that creators could select specifically what type of ad they wanted. Now they can't. I'll go ahead and tell you, on the main channel, I never picked. So the ad experience over on the main channel is what you'll get everywhere now. If it was something that really bothered you, just expect it to be YouTube wide now. I never had any complaints about it. I don't want to say that creators are blowing it out of proportion, because by YouTube standards, a lot of videos over on the main channel, they should have an ad in the middle of it, and I don't like the way it breaks it up. So I select so there's not one over there. So I can understand people wanting to have control over that, but from what I can tell, I don't think this is going to be a big deal. Okay. Let's talk about inconsistency. My tax dollars are going to defend Ukraine. Why aren't they going to defend Armenia from non-defensive invasion? Okay. Well, first, they are. Just maybe not the way you think. But more importantly, you're looking at this through the lens of good guys and bad guys and morality and fair play and all of that stuff. None of that has anything to do with foreign policy. Foreign policy is about power, nothing else. Don't get it twisted. But the United States has committed funds to run an ad campaign in another country that Armenia is having issues with. If you don't get that reference, there's a video on this channel, on the Roads with Bo channel, titled The Roads to Ukraine. Watch that. It might give you a little bit of insight. But there is definitely funding committed to promote certain things. It's just not the same way, but it wouldn't be, because foreign policy-wise, Ukraine is more important. I know people want morality and fair play to matter when it comes to these decisions. They don't. They don't. That's not how it works. The world would be better if it was how it worked, but it's not. Okay. Over on a new social media platform, leftists and moderates have been arguing about whether Biden is an authoritarian. Is Biden truly an authoritarian? Okay, well, it depends on what kind of leftist you're talking about. You have to understand that when you're talking about the various political ideologies, a lot of them they're based on, these are the core beliefs. These beliefs are not things that can change. If you are talking about an anti-authoritarian leftist, so we're talking, if you're using the grid all the way over, or at least mostly over to the left and all the way down, yeah, Biden's an authoritarian. Is he an authoritarian to the same degree that Trump is? No, and I think most anti-authoritarian leftists would agree with that. However, the difference that you see, I'm assuming as a moderate, between Biden and Trump, it's nowhere near as great to them. They don't see it as big of a difference. because they're still using the state's monopoly on violence. And that is really the defining line. So for leftists to say that Biden is an authoritarian, particularly if they're like anti-authoritarian leftists, which are the only people I can imagine making this argument, yeah, I mean, that's a very principled stance for them to take. Again, it goes to the foreign policy thing, though. That's ideology and how things should work. In the pragmatic world, I mean, things are a little different. Now, you have some authoritarian leftists who really might say that Biden doesn't go far enough in being an authoritarian. But I don't think that those are the people making this argument. You have probably run into a group of anti-authoritarian leftists, and that's who's making this claim. I will go ahead and tell you, don't dismiss them. They may be very very concerned with purity of belief. But philosophically, if you're going to listen to a group of people that are far outside the Overton window, and you want to inform your political opinions based on a philosophy, I wouldn't shut them out. I would definitely listen to what they have to say, even if some of the rhetoric they use isn't something you want to hear. Are you a Stoic or a Buddhist? I'm Bo. I think that most philosophies, most religions, have things that are valuable in them. And I think that if you can understand a large number of them, and you can kind of search out the universal elements, you will find humanity's baseline, and you will find a good place to kind of start to build your own philosophy and figure out where you want to be in the world. As far as my religious beliefs, we don't talk about them on the channel. I will talk about religion every once in a while if there's a situation that arises that I feel like it has to be addressed. But generally speaking, it's not something that I think is my place to critique, really. Why does Trump need to see the documents? He's had them for over 2 years. Okay. So this is obviously about the documents case and how Trump is saying that he wants access and so on and so forth. People want to know why he needs to see them. He's given access to them because they're evidence. It's discovery. The same way somebody would be given access to a note that was written about them, or they would see photos of stuff that it was alleged that they stole or something like that. Why does he need to see them? He doesn't. He doesn't. Even for a defense, I don't understand how having access is going to help. I would imagine that his attorneys are not going to spend a whole lot of time poring over those documents. They're really not that important. It's not the content of the document that matters. It's why he had them. The content of the document isn't something they're going to be able to dispute. So, realistically, he doesn't have a need. However, he is entitled to them because of discovery. Any advice for Drew Barrymore? Oh, yeah, I saw that. That hurt. Don't scab. I honestly feel like she thought her show was incredibly important to people. And she thought that people would be okay with her show going back even during this strike. She found out they're not. And it has caused quite the backlash. Now, she also said something that said it's more complicated than that, and there are other people's jobs and all of this stuff. If there is a contract thing involved, where other people are going to lose their jobs, or there's legal consequences because it's, quote, complicated, just remember that if you honestly feel like you have to do it, there's a strike fund. If you wanted to, and this goes to anybody who is, quote, not having writers right now, but going back on the air, if you're really that upset and you're in a position where you feel like you have to do it even though you want to show solidarity, there are ways to show solidarity. There's a strike fund. You could make part of your show showcasing the demands of those who are on strike. There's always something that can be done rather than just breaking the strike. I am from that generation, so, Drew Barrymore and all of that stuff. But I cannot imagine a scenario in which the show has to go on the air. But if that scenario existed, there are a number of ways available for her to show solidarity with the unions. It's not a thing where there's nothing that she can do. If the show's going to go on, it's a talk show. You can have a segment about it every episode. There are ways that you could do it if there's some kind of contract or there's some situation that absolutely requires it. And to be honest, I can't think of any. But if that situation does exist, more can be done than just owning the decision and going forward. I would assume that the best thing to do would be what's always the best thing to do in this situation. Don't cross the picket line. But if there is some bizarre extenuating circumstance, there are alternatives that are available. And it looks like that's it. That is it. Okay. So that's the information from last week that didn't get the coverage it should, either on my channel or in general, that you will probably see again. And better information will make all the difference. Y'all have a good night.